Remember all these things, okay? Just want to stop the transcription, right? So that you have my face for at least a few minutes. Again, evening, everyone. As I said, oh my gosh, yeah, no. That's minus 25%. Well, yeah, I'm a little bit loud, unfortunately. Right, everyone. So let's have a glance at the assignment. I'll split the assignment and the recording when we start with class tonight. So the same story with the assignment. The one thing I want to talk about is, and I've had a request from somebody on this group, how do we integrate theory and application? And for me, I always thought that I always thought that that was logical, and maybe it's not logical, and maybe it's logical for me. So I just want to chat about when we attacked this assignment, how to integrate those two elements. Okay, the face goes. Thank goodness for that. Right, so let's have a look at this quickly. The assignment itself. So no dramas with this. Um, one of the feedback bits that I received during the evaluations was that I harp on about AI use, etc. So just to say, we actively want you to use AI. I'm not checking for AI anymore. If I believe that AI has been abused, I have the ability to take off up to 30% in terms of deductions, but I'm not looking for AI anymore. I think my only concern is that you need AI to guide you, but you can't take the assignment, stick it into chat, and ask chat to spit out the answer for you. That to me is where it becomes a real issue. So I'm not going to harp on about it. So I don't check for it anymore. But if I think it's been abused and I think you've just generated an answer, then I will obviously deduct significant marks for that. You still do you have to do the declaration, Nosipo. You still have to show me the prompts you used, etc. So yes, absolutely. So that if I get suspicious, I've got the declaration, I've got the prompts to allay my fears and my suspicions. Okay. Right. So you'll see that this is a South African company. And what I've tried to do in these companies, I've definitely, yeah, sorry, I've definitely tried to give a lot of hints in terms of application bits. So if we look here, critically evaluate why Sweep South's innovation matters. The other thing that you'll see is that everything here is geared obviously towards the exam. Now, obviously, in terms of the exam, we already know what it will look like because we know what the assignments look like. So the one thing that I've been asked is this bit at the bottom, as I've already said. So if we look at this very quickly and just to guide a little bit more than I usually do. So why innovation matters, you should be able to go to your slide and go Control F, watch this now, bomb on me. Why does innovation matter? So the question is taken directly from the slide. So you should, with the exams as well, although we do quite decent exam prep, be able to use the slides to guide you directly to the answer. Please don't rush out to buy this textbook. I think it is really dated and it's not worth it. I will try and share some innovation textbooks, although they're very tough to find, but I'm sure that with a bit of digging, I'll find one or two. And where we are more concerned about finding just the headings and not finding the textbook. I hope no one's rushed off to buy this textbook. It is really dated. So in terms of that, why does it matter? We are looking at Learning Unit 1, and we are looking at slides 14 and 15. Okay, so Learning Unit 1, slides 14 and 15. So if we now look at this one specifically, what you should be able to do based on here is there will be an explanation here why this has become important. And you can already see during the COVID-19, due to lockdown, responded by adjusting its operations. So immediately you'll see that there is a hint already that links into the fact that we say that it's about survival, growth, and opportunity. So for me, those are the little, and I'm going to call them Easter eggs in my case studies that I leave behind for you. And it's about integrating those two. And to me, I will try as much as possible to have those Easter eggs in the actual case study, although I can't make it too obvious, guys, because it still is a case study. It still is an assignment, and it's still about learning and interpreting and understanding and applying and getting good marks. Yeah, so it's about stakeholders, etc., etc. So in terms of that, so you can see why it matters. So it drives economic growth. Give me examples of innovations that have driven economic growth in South Africa. Let's not use South Africa. Give me examples of innovation that have driven economic growth in Silicon Valley in America to make it more obvious. E-commerce. Um, Apple is there. Google is there. I've got a feeling Tesla might be there as well. And it's created this economic hub. So we definitely see that it has an effect in terms of driving GDP. And the one thing we know is that it's about reinventing yourself. So we've seen this term a number of times, dynamic capability. It's the ability to stay relevant. It's the ability to take the organization and shake it a little bit and then find ways of filling in the missing gaps so that this company again is able to keep in step with the external environment. But it's that relevance that matters, and that dynamic capability comes from innovation, comes from people constantly questioning status quo, comes from people constantly asking the question, why are we doing this and what can we do better? So in terms of what it requires, and then why, to whom does it matter? I think in terms of GDP, we know that that is essential, but also in terms of trade and sector bodies. Think of where our health innovations have come in the last 20 years. I might have shared this with you already, but up to and it's quite strange how these innovations changed at a junction point in about 2008. Let me just paint because it allows me to express my artistic side. So up to 2008, when it came to aging, the idea of aging was that, and it's about 2008, and there's another industry that around 2008 had a significant improvement beyond there. But up to 2008, aging was about slowing down the process. Aging was about making sure that people look younger, that we have better nutrition. From 2008, the significant change there was that aging, in terms of the paradigm shift, was treated as a disease to be cured. So we know that at this point, there's a belief that the first person to live to 1,000 years old has already been born. So if you are 40 and younger, even a little bit higher than 40, about 45 and younger, you're part of this generation that will comfortably live to 100. If you now in your 20s, you're aiming to live to 120. Now, there are other implications in terms of additional nutrition and we're running out of land, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at this point, we had this significant shift where aging became a disease to be cured. And when you think of the impact in terms of the health industry and the wellness industry, It also shifted there that all of a sudden we were thinking about hospitals not as places where you are born and where you die, but rather as a way of extending and improving life. Guys, and then supply chain owners. So as much as companies innovate, because we use components and sub-assemblies from other organizations, we expect those organizations to innovate as well. So for me, why innovation matters, I think, imagine going back 40 years ago and telling somebody from back in the 1980s what life is now, where you have cell phones, you have driverless cars, you have drones. I don't think that person could ever stretch their imagination that far. And I think that's why it matters. It's improved life significantly. Right. Any questions, comments about that one? But you can see has grown significantly. So those little Easter eggs and kernels of information are always in my case studies. So I don't know who, I can't recall who had asked me about this, but it gives you an idea of what I expect. And really good students are able to take and give me the theory and integrate the application. They don't give me all the theory and then they give me all the examples. It's that building a story around the theory and the application. Any questions at this stage, you guys? So everyone okay with the first one? So the second one, right? So the 4P framework, it's one of those that you will always see in exams, etc. So the 4P framework, product, process, position. This is still learning unit one. Learning unit one. So the 4P framework. Yeah, 4P. Let's see if I'm good enough to get to 4P. 4P. There it is. So again, you'll see that I've taken the actual question directly from the slides. So in terms of the 4Ps, I think it's an indication where we can innovate. So in terms of product, these are those products and service an organization offers. Give me an example of a product that has impressed you in the last couple of years, the last 2, 3 years, that has been innovated, product that has been improved significantly. In the last couple of years. I think for me, it's the camera quality in phones, self-driving cars, smart watches, absolutely. So we've seen how these advances have happened. And I think that's where we see a significant amount of our innovations. However, I think some of the more subtle and more exciting innovations happen in terms of the manufacturing process and the delivery process. So obviously, in terms of process, how we actually build these things, and we see significant robotics. Somebody mentioned last week that people 3D print houses now, that it's potentially possible to fast charging. 100%, Liam, that is so true. Okay, Liam, nice. And then how they are delivered. In terms of delivery, we know, for example, that drone deliveries are very, very close to Checker 6060, a wonderful example of that. If you ever have a second, and I don't think I can actually show it during the call, but you can have a glance at it. Search Walmart drone delivery on YouTube. And you'll see it's been happening in America already. We definitely will see the change. Absolutely. The delivery in terms of Bluetooth speakers, a wonderful, wonderful example of how to get sound improved. Guys, and then just your possession. So in terms of the possession, it's where you actually will position yourself within a particular market. I think the one thing that we've seen that the Chinese have given us, in particular in the automobile industry, is that they found a wonderful niche where they compete. Now, I know that the new Cherry 9 is over 1 million, or is very close to 1 million rand. But when you see what you get in that, it is still value for money. So they have this amazing niche within the broader market, and then shifts in paradigms. So the paradigm shift for me that comes from my industry where I did my studies is the fact that there is the shift to electric vehicles. And I know a lot of people will struggle with the idea of an electric vehicle, but I really believe it's somewhere in our futures that I don't see that it's possible for us to even drive diesel vehicles anymore, although some of the diesel vehicles are astonishing. So we see the four P's. So again, and I don't want to now give the answers and make it too obvious, but if you look at the little Easter eggs in here, you'll find that there are examples of the four P's throughout here, guys. Just to look. If you have to do a bit of extra research, that's fine as well. I've given you links to these things, okay, to the articles that contributed to that article. Okay. And then where does Sweep South sit in terms of strategic positioning? So when I think of strategic positioning, I think the idea of an Apple competing with an Oppo doesn't make sense to me. For me, those two brands position themselves very differently in the market. And I think in terms of vehicles as well, and I'm going to be a bit ridiculous, a silly example, and my apologies, a Lamborghini is not positioning itself in the same way as a Polo is, although Polo drivers will believe they are Lamborghinis. And then the dynamic capability. So in terms of strategic positioning, let me see here. Okay. Not good. So for the four Ps, my apologies, I didn't say which slide. It's Learning Unit 1, slides 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. And then I just want to go a little bit down here. So it should be based on what I've said, and watch me mess this up now. Positioning, there's strategic positioning. So in deciding there, looking at your competitive forces, remember those competitive forces would be those industry key success factors, would be the competitors that there are, would be customers and the power of customers. Remember Porter's five forces that you've done in the past, what the barriers to entry are in terms of new companies coming in or you wanting to go into a new industry, likely threat from substitutes. Substitutes essentially do something similar, but it is not a direct competitor. And then also those key players. Can I be honest with you? It's Porter's five forces, just asked in a different way. Those of you that remember Porter's five forces will recall what the five forces are: power of competitors, power of buyers, power of suppliers, potential substitutes, and new entries as well. So that is slides 35 and 36, Learning Unit 1, slides 35 and 36. Okay. All right. Any questions at this stage before I stop recording? And then dynamic capability, the last question. Dynamic capabilities, my apologies. Again, Learning Unit 1. I'm just going to go dynamic. Should find it. There it is. So dynamic capabilities, the ability to reinvent yourself all the time, the ability to make sure that you don't become stale, that ability to reconfigure the organization so that it remains relevant in terms of the broader industry. And that is slide 40 in Learning Unit 1. Right, now there must be questions. Please ask questions. I'm trying to drink my cappuccino. Okay, I'll stop recording then. Now, let me, oh gosh, I can't